400 of you about. Sharon Tuck, Bria Lay, Stephanie. I didn't even arrange with you guys to be here, but I'm glad that you made it. Patricia Emery, hi Nick and all from there. Are any of you guys interested in seeing the new Timmy, the new look Timmy? But I've got to warn you, you might actually be shocked. You might be shocked, upset, put off, disappointed. Amber says, how are you today? How's Timmy? Timmy wants to make an appearance, but it's the new look. Do you guys want to see what he looks like? Good evening from Sweden. Rose Gardner says, be nice. Someone says the Hillbilly Horror Show. Raymond says, yes, good to see you, Raymond. Stephanie says, yes, with exclamation mark. I was waiting for that. Okay. Timmy, are you ready for your camera? Timmy, are you ready? He's sort of pawing at my leg. He's desperate for his moment. Timmy, come, let's go. Come, Timmy. Whoa, he jumped right onto the chair. It's quite a jump. This is the new improved Timmy. How's that? Looks totally different, doesn't he? Totally different. Timmy's been shaved because the weather's heating up, although the nights are still quite cold. And he's going to be making his first trip to the beach quite soon. And so it's to allow him to swim in the water and drive quite quickly. Shall I hold him up a little bit better so you can kind of get a good look? I personally don't prefer him like this. I prefer him with looking a bit more fluffy, but it's sort of more for practical reasons and health reasons, because you can pick up fleas at the beach and that kind of thing. Cynthia says, I like the fluffy Timmy better. Yeah, me too. He's almost unrecognizable. He looks like he's a third of the dog, a shadow of the dog that he was. He looks totally different. Sherry says, I love the brows. He has had a haircut. Anyway, there he is. He's a lot more affectionate at night because he's obviously needs a bit more layers and warming up at night. So he's a lot more cuddly. But Patriot says, I like his cut better. Okay. True Crime Wifey says, we had a mini schnauzer growing up named Ruffin. Okay. Adorable. Where's my accent from? Can you guess? Ilva Bjornsson, does he have a sweater for the night? He used to have a sweater, but he's sort of outgrown all of them. So at night, he's just going to have to, cuddle up. But it is kind of getting warmer quite rapidly. Tonight, there's actually a big thunderstorm outside. So the weather is changing. The seasons are changing. We don't really get winter rainfall here. So the fact that it's raining now is a sign that summer's on its way, or spring. So Timmy. Howdy from Warminster. He's better with hair. It's hot in Durban. Okay. It sounds British, but also Indian. Am I from India? Am I from India, Andol? Hi from Australia. What size sweater do you think he'd need? I'm not sure what the doggy size is, but it's, I guess, the size for a schnauzer. But he did have a sweater when he was a puppy, and he's outgrown quite a few of them already. Okay, so see, we're 800. So what we're going to be doing in this episode is I'm going to take you through two sort of narratives. The one is Grandma, has she changed everything? We're going to deal with that part. Grandma spoke to someone on Facebook Messenger, I guess. Did that sort of throw a wrench into the works? Did that upset the apple cart? has that precipitated all sorts of strange happenings that kind of thrown a cat between the pigeons, right? So that's the first thing we're going to look into. But more specifically, I want to look at Grandma's contribution to the timeline. Grandma spoke about the timeline. Is that changing everything? Has what Grandma said changed the timeline, right? So we're going to look at that aspect, and then we're also going to look at some of the latest news regarding Don. He's playing the sympathy card with Trish. Is it going to work? Is Jeannie going to kind of feel sorry for him and let Don off the hook, right? So that is basically what we're going to talk about tonight and investigate tonight on day 81 since Summerwell's disappeared. I see justice seekers here. Amber Wiley, hi from South Africa. Hi, Amber. Smoky Blue Day says India's the Northern Hemisphere. That's true. Sunny Sandy, good to see you. So as soon as we hit 1,000, we'll kind of get going. I see there's some channels that will have like 14,000 in chat. We're not quite there yet. Long time she's been missing. You're right, Anna. Teresa Anastasi, hello from Southern California. I hope you guys are doing okay with what's going on down there. Not quite sure where the fires are. No, it's colder. What part of California is that? I see Donald Duck's also here. Claire Burrows says, I really hope Jeannie has best charges. Virginia, hey, you all from Arkansas. Hi there. Asteroid Dear, hi from Sweden. Wow, it's coming through quite quickly now. Terry Jones, hi from Louisiana. I hope you're doing okay there, Terry. I hope it's sort of drying up and kind of bearable. Cassia G, hi from Germany. Rosie Buckley, hi from Ireland. Okay, so we're over the 1,000 mark. So we're going to address the first issue now, whether Grandma changes the timeline, right? Now, I don't know if you remember what Grandma said to Crime Stories Obsessed, right? In that Facebook correspondence, she was sort of presented with something and kind of let off the hook saying, you don't need to answer if you don't want to. And then she said, no, I was by the flowers. And she said, about an hour and a half after that video. So what Grandma was saying was that an hour and a half passed after that video, right? And then she said, what did she say? She was there when she took the video. And I think she said that they got home an hour and a half after the video, right? In other words, 90 minutes after the video was taken, they arrived home. And that kind of opens up certain possibilities. Did they go to the water park after the video? Did they go to Don's workplace? Where did they go? If they didn't go home, where were they? Kind of what was going on? So if I understand this correctly, Grandma said the drive home after the last photo, which she took, she also says she's also kind of admitting that she took that video and she's responsible for the last photo. How many of you were in any doubt about that? How many of you felt that it wasn't Grandma who took the last photo or the last video? If you felt that it was Grandma all along, put a 1. If you felt it was somebody else, some mysterious, maybe it was Macbeth, put a 2. Let's see what you guys say. So most of you feel it was Grandma. I kind of thought it was Grandma. Some people said it didn't sound like Grandma. I thought it was Grandma. So most of you saying 1, Grandma, and some of you not sure. Okay. In any event, if we assume Grandma did say that, how does it change things? If we assume that what this is, Grandma does have quite a husky voice, but I think your voice can change when, under certain circumstances. I could have quite a deep voice in the morning. In any event, if we do assume that it was Grandma and we take this scenario at face value, the 90 minutes, where does it take us, and does it change everything? Now, I kind of mean the question in two ways. I mean, does what Grandma said about the timeline change everything? But also, did what Grandma said to that channel, that coming to light, has that changed everything? Has that shifted the power dynamics? Has that set a cat between the pigeons? Has that caused Don to sort of move onto the back foot? Has it changed the, I guess, the power dynamic in this story? Because bear in mind, what kind of happened was Grandma broke her silence, but not quite. She sort of revealed certain things, but then sort of backtracked and said, I didn't say that. So she kind of got, I won't say tricked into breaking her silence, but what happened effectively meant Grandma broke her silence, even though she didn't really make that decision herself in a way. But effectively, Grandma has had an impact on everything. She's created more pressure, more tension, more. I think you might agree with me if I say it's not reflected very well on Don. It sort of turned the screws in on Don a little bit. And so, we've got to ask, if it does change everything, how does it change everything? Because no one's been arrested. Nothing has fundamentally changed since that came out. But are those balls rolling? Are those wheels turning? So if we take the 90 minutes, we say after that video was taken, I've heard that it was 5 minutes after it was taken that they arrived home. I think I've worked it out that it probably would normally take you about 11 minutes from the location home if you're just using generic Google Maps from that location. So there's been minimizing the time, making the time shorter than it probably was, and then also making it a lot longer. So once again, you potentially have these time bandits, time holes in the timeline. So what it could mean, if it's true, is that Grandma and Candace changed direction and drove to Jonesboro to meet Don, or somewhere, anywhere else. It could mean that they just went, they didn't go home, so they went somewhere else. Where did they go? If they didn't go to Jonesboro, where did they go? But I'm not convinced Grandma's version of the timeline changes anything, quite frankly. I've always assumed that the time spent at the swimming hole has been minimized, like to 15 to 20 minutes. That's quite a nice length of time to have a quick swim and then go home and for nothing to happen. There's no time to get drunk or for anything to happen in 15 to 20 minutes, right? So I think what Grandma's in a weird way trying to do is trying to say, well, we spent a lot of time in the car after that last photo was taken. And so, Macbeth isn't in the equation, drinking isn't in the equation, the swimming hole isn't in the equation. And I don't know if I believe that. I think there wasn't that much time spent in the car. There was quite a lot of time that day spent at the swimming hole. And that is where the biggest holes are. What were you doing at the swimming hole? What is going on at the swimming hole? Who is at the swimming hole? What were you doing? Where was Summer? Thanks a lot for that, Raymond. So, there's no time to get drunk in 15 to 20 minutes, but if you take Grandma's 90 minutes and you add to that, would there have been time? And then for that to be cut short by something happening and now you've got to go back, right? So if you're there for 1 to 2 hours, there's plenty of opportunity to get drunk and high, lose track of time, have an incident and try to do a little CPR perhaps. So in my view, Grandma's change to the timeline concedes a 90-minute period, give or take, that's unaccounted for. So in other words, Grandma's 90 minutes is a different version to Candace's, I think she said 5 or 10 minutes. And so what that I believe is conceding is that this is another chunk of time that is strange, that is kind of contradicted, right? So, it's felt all along to me that there are hours, not minutes, in the afternoon period after Macbeth was dropped off where there were huge holes in the timeline. So it's like Macbeth is dropped off at, say, 2:02, and then, it's like at, I think, 23 minutes past 6, like 4 hours later, 911 is called. That seems like a big chunk of time to not be quite clear what happened. And a channel, I think it's also True Crime Obsessed, put up a short little video just emphasizing this whole thing of where was Don, because if you take what has been said by some of the characters in this case, Don called Candace. Macbeth overheard the conversation. From Macbeth's perspective, he understood that Don may have been home because Don was saying, there's a dude running around here, right? And it kind of made Macbeth think, I think Don's not at work, right? And I think it's not Don wasn't at work or Don was at work. I think it could be both. Don was at work, but he wasn't at work the whole day. I don't kind of get the feeling that Don's work is like 9 to 5 every day, bearing in mind that Candace sometimes supports him, sometimes works with him. I don't get the sense that it's 9 to 5, regular work, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I kind of get the idea it's kind of piecemeal work. A section here and a section there. He gets paid per sort of job in a way, not per month, but I could be wrong. That's something that his boss would probably be able to clarify, and co-host would probably be able to clarify. So I feel like Grandma has simply drawn our attention back to the original True Crime Rocket Science scenario of a swimming hole incident. But what do you guys feel? Do you think Grandma's statements have changed how you feel about the case in a material way? What do you guys say about that? Let's just look at some of your comments. Karina says, I think the poor girl is no longer alive. I tend to agree with that. A lot of people are talking about finding Summer, but I sort of wonder if you did find her right now, what would you find? What would there be left to find? Barbara Burgess says, took her to Don. I don't really think that that's the case. One thing I will say about the trafficking thing is, all this time we've been saying, are things worse than they appear? Like how extreme are things? There's excesses going on. Are things worse than we imagine? Well, the trafficking narrative fits in with that. Like it's worse than you can imagine. I don't know, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know if it's that bad. It could be, I suppose. Becky Judson, thanks for that, Becky. Thank you for keeping the focus on Summer. Thank you for that. I think there was something from Kay Heflin. Thanks for that. Do you think there is any way they faked this? So something that did occur to me is, what if the entire swimming hole scenario is faked? What if all of that is kind of, how can I put it? What if all of that is kind of pageantry? There's a video, but it's from a different time. What if that entire thing is to distract us from something else that happened? So in other words, there was no swimming hole. Summer never swam. Thanks a lot, Vicky Cunningham. There was no swimming hole. Summer never swam. ... And then I think you've kind of got to say, well, why would Macbeth say that he did? And Macbeth would also have to sort of say, well, okay, so we can see a video of you and Summer. So who is he trying to protect and why? And then also in a way, Alison, because Alison was saying, you know, my son needed permission to go fishing and then swimming. So I mean, now it's becoming quite a big conspiracy. Right? So I think that is quite an interesting thought. I don't believe it, but I think it's quite an interesting thought that you can have this huge block of time, this whole narrative that you're paying attention to that is totally bogus, that's sidelining you from another narrative and another character and another scenario. You know, that could definitely, that's definitely sort of on the cards and a thing like this. I just don't see that because, you know, it's almost, there's a legal term, common cause. And Candace says they were at the swimming hole. Macbeth says they were at the swimming hole. Grandma says they were at the swimming hole. You don't really hear Don talking much about that aspect. But it seems fairly like common cause, right? Lauren Noel Hall, Macbeth was used to TikTok videos. He talked about his tech skills. Yeah. So in modern true crime, you often have digital breadcrumbs. And on the one hand, digital breadcrumbs are very compelling. You know, they're time-stamped. There's often video footage or photography or whatever. And so in that sense, they're really compelling. But at the same time, digital breadcrumbs can be counterfeited. You can kind of mislead someone with a, you know, you can counterfeit, they say, certain Facebook posts, and you can mislead people in a certain way. So in the same way that digital breadcrumbs are strong evidence, potentially, it can also be misleading. I don't know whether the last photo qualifies in the sense of it being misleading. I think rather the opposite, that the last photo is quite strong. It's quite, you know, it's like the last photo we have of Summer. She's not smiling, she's not talking, she's not running around. She looks like something could be wrong. She looks like she could be in distress. She looks like she could even be cold. Can you hear Timmy? It's funny, when I talk, he snores. When I stop talking, he stops snoring, like almost like he's woken up. Something I want to just put out there that I thought was quite interesting. I was listening to Judge Judy on television earlier today, and the issue was that a grandmother was very upset because she was being expected to hand over child support payments, but the person looking after the child hadn't sort of asked her permission or something to look after the child, but this person was looking after the child. And so this person felt like, you know what, I shouldn't be giving any money away. But what it made me think about was, you know, in the Wells scenario, would there be like 4 times child support payments from the state, or what? You know, what was possibly going on there? What do you guys think about that? Donald Duck says, the sad thing about this whole situation is Summer is always the last thing brought up. Every person or family member involved in this is putting Don first. Yeah, I think from the perspective of, let's just get to Sharon. Thanks for that, Sharon. Cell phone records should be ready for law enforcement. I would assume so. It's difficult to say conclusively about that because there's spotty cell phone reception in that area. I do get the sense that there's quite a lot of traffic in terms, if you look at the heavy use of social media by Candace and Don, I think that implies that there's quite a lot of chatter going on their cell phones, but it's not a given because of the spotty cell phone reception. So you also don't know sometimes when cell phone records are deleted, some of it is hard to retrieve. Whether that'll be the case in this case, I don't know. I know that it was what they retrieved in the Barry Morphew case was quite extensive and quite damning. Ditto the Laurie Vallow case. So I do think the cell phone records are going to be quite conclusive. To come back to Donald Duck, I think you're talking about the family members that it's all about Don. I do agree with you that from their perspective, it should be about Summer, right? It should be about Summer. We all heard Candace bawling. I'm calling that blubbergate, just a blubbering and sputtering. If there any of you here from the Chris Watts case, you all know about Nutgate. Well, this is blubbergate, right? It's as much ado about something that turned out to be bogus, right? But and so what came out of blubbergate was why on earth have they not? Why on earth did Candace not cry like that about Summer? I mean, as far as we know, we certainly never saw that, and she was very vocal about how distressed she was about Don. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail in a moment, but so it's not all about Summer, right? But I just want to say from the perspective of the true crime community, because you sometimes get people saying this should all be about Summer, we should only be talking about Summer. But at this point, we don't know where she is. So you could say, okay, no, but then go and look for her. Okay, but people have looked for her and they can't find her. So let's just keep the focus on Summer. Okay, but we have. And what it appears here is that foul play occurred, foul play that was covered up. And so now the attention then shifts to who covered it up. So I want to compare to the JonBenet Ramsey case. You have JonBenet Ramsey who's missing, then she's found, right? Then she's found in the basement. Do you then still keep it about JonBenet? Do you still focus on JonBenet? Or do you start to say, well, how did she get to the basement? Who wrote the ransom note? What happened to JonBenet? Who did something to JonBenet? Does that make sense? So you've also got to move beyond the victimology to some extent. I mean, the focus is on Summer, but to be honest, I really don't think, even if you found Summer, I don't think she would be alive. I don't think she'd be living. I could be wrong. So, you could look for her, and even if you did find her, what would you find? I don't know if you would find very much. I'm not saying don't look for remains and that where you found her wouldn't mean something. It certainly would. I'm just saying perhaps it would mean more to find out who's responsible for what happened to Summer. And so, as much as our priority is Summer, in terms of fighting for justice and fighting for, how can one put it, pursuing justice, one's got to look at the people around Summer. Does that make sense? Let's just look at some of your comments. Brenda Woodruff, praise for Summer, thanks for that. Elizabeth Smart, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think you mean Kristen Smart, isn't it? Connie says you have to put all the pieces of the puzzle together to find out what happened to Summer. Be familiar, says Donald's past behavior is relevant. Okay. Susan says, when we focus on potential suspects, we are focusing on Summer. Yeah. Okay, so something I just want to bring up here is I think a lot of what we're dealing with here is folks who are morally bankrupt. And I think it's taken some people a while to reach that point. I think a lot of people said, don't judge, you can't judge. These people have got a different set of circumstances to deal with, ... right? But I think the other side of that is moral bankruptcy. And I think we've seen that in many different ways exposed, right? Now, I think moral bankruptcy, often you see it with the filthy rich, someone who's really, really, really wealthy, but it's like ill-gotten gains. Those people are also often morally bankrupt. Think of the guy like the Wolf of Wall Street and so on, right? But I also think morally bankruptness or moral bankruptcy translates to people who are filthy poor. Someone who is poor, but they're caught in a cycle of dysfunction and they don't seem to see a link, or they're incapable of transcending their moral bankruptcy in a way to say, I need to stop doing this, then my life will improve, right? They seem to enjoy being morally bankrupt, and so the poverty seems to be okay. And it doesn't matter having poor standards in terms of honesty and things like that, and ethics. So dark, the con of man, isn't it? So I'm just looking at my notes here. Just see if so one of the things I just want to talk about here is just generally, did Grandma change everything? So in terms of the timeline, I don't think Grandma has changed the timeline. In fact, I think Grandma, what she said about the 90 minutes makes one more concerned, certainly makes me more concerned about what happened at the swimming hole, because she's almost shifting our attention to the events after the swimming hole where nothing happened. It was 90 minutes kind of thing. Then I think the question is, has Grandma changed everything with regard to the dynamics? And I think that's quite an interesting question. Has Grandma caused Jeannie and Mary to be more activated to do what they're doing? Because I think what's happening with Jeannie is changing things. So I know what I think, but let's just do a little bit of a survey with you guys. Do you think Grandma has had an influence in Jeannie and Mary coming forward? If you think yes, put a 1. If you think no, put a 2. Let's just do a little test of your critical thinking. I'll say that again. Do you think Grandma has had an impact on Jeannie and Mary? 1 yes, 2 no, coming forward. I see mostly 2s. I see a couple of 1s. I'm glad to see mostly 2s. I think you know what I'm talking about. Jeannie and Mary seem to predate the Grandma breaking her silence thing. They were starting to sort of come forward. Things were happening there long before Grandma came forward. In fact, Jeannie came forward the day after Summer went missing, right? So something resonated with Jeannie regardless, right? And it's quite interesting that Grandma didn't come forward on the first day, given what had happened to Rosemary, right? So bear in mind, it's a little bit different for Grandma. She lives on the property. Her daughter's married to Don, right, as well. But the other thing that someone did a little bit of mathematical calculations in some other comments where they were saying, how can you say that Jeannie kept a secret for 37 years? Isn't it 45 years? Well, it is 45 years if you add 8 years to that equation. It's 37 years if you take the moment the essay stopped, when she was, I think, 12 years old. If you go back 8 years to when she was 5 years old, well, then it's, keeping the secret for 45 years. But basically, once everything stopped, you could theoretically start the clock and say the secret keeping started 37 years ago, right? And so it's quite a big deal. Someone who's kept a secret for 37 years, they must have had a good reason, in a way, to keep a secret for that long, a secret that would definitely have eaten at them. But then they would equally have had a very compelling reason to break such a fundamental silence. I just want to acknowledge some of these super chats. I think I saw one from Alina Wolf. Alina Wolf, thanks for that. Grandis may be afraid to fully come forward. The latest call with Don and Mary shows how gaslighted the whole family was or is. The fear and manipulation. I want to get to that right now, but that's a good point. So I think just to address this question, has Grandma changed everything with a timeline? I don't think so. Has Grandma changed the dynamics with Jeannie and Mary? I don't think so. You guys, most of you guys don't think so either. I do think the Facebook chat did push the leading edge of what's happening forward. In other words, where this case needs to go, the wheel turned a little bit in that direction, thanks to that, right? It didn't take it the other way. It wasn't like Grandma said, Don's an awesome dude. He's a I really don't suspect him at all. I think it's something else. That's not what kind of came out of that. She was kind of it sounded like she was hoping, maybe even wishing, that Don would get arrested. That is what came out of that. And what is quite interesting is after Grandma's talking in that direction, there was a lot of talk about Don getting arrested, and even this whole Blubbergate, which was a whole spiel about Don getting arrested. And so in a weird way, Grandma started that ball rolling, if you think of it. So I think Grandma didn't really change things, but she may have influenced the tension that has been taking place. I also think what is quite interesting is I think Grandma, people paid quite a lot of attention to that at a time. I don't know if you noticed, at the time that Grandma's correspondence came out, there was kind of a dip, a lull, where nothing was really happening. Nothing was happening on social media. Nothing was happening in the media. Nothing was happening. And then that thing with Grandma kind of came online, and that seemed to galvanize things. It seemed to create a lot of spotlights. And I think it did shine. Don must have felt like it shone a glaring light onto him. Thanks a lot for that. She Who Cries Out, thanks a lot for that. Donald Duck says, as a trauma survivor, sometimes the only way to cope is to put it away and forget. And when something big happens, brings the trauma back. Yeah. Navy Vet says, most victims keep silent until something triggers or they decide to take their power back, thus stepping into becoming a survivor. I don't know whether what I'm going to say now is self-indulgent. Thanks a lot, Raymond. But I'm kind of in a situation where, look, I haven't been abused. I haven't been, anything like that. But I've kind of made a decision that I'm not going to deal with drama from my own family. I've been quite clear about that. And as a result, I've kind of separated myself from them. Obviously, I would love a situation where everyone gets along and, it's the little house on the prairie scenario. But in order for my own sanity and in order to be an effective person, I've kind of felt like I've had to put that dysfunctional stuff aside so that I can move forward. And I have actually done that, and I feel like I have moved forward effectively. I'm sorry it had to happen, but I've had to do it for my own sanity. And that is not, like what I'm trying to say is, and I'm someone who's a big believer in you don't suppress your feelings, you don't repress yourself, you communicate, you're transparent, you're authentic, you share your emotions, all that kind of thing. But the problem is when somebody else isn't doing that, when someone else is manipulating, when someone else is holding back, when someone else is being dramatic or whatever. And so sometimes for your own sanity, if you're a sincere person, you've got to say, well, I'm not getting a sincere thing going on here, and so I need to move on with my sincere journey. Otherwise, I'm going to be dragged down. And so there is sometimes a good reason to I won't say keep a secret, but to let things go so that you can grow. Sharon Tuck says, I think Don will flee soon, maybe Candace too. I don't know about that. I don't know if they can. I think that they probably know that all the eyes are on them. Also, I certainly thought when Blubbergate happened, I thought that could have been like a kind of a coded way of allowing Don to disappear. In other words, Don didn't run away, Don was taken away. And so if you don't see Don, that's explanation. But it seems like it was far more, somebody said that earlier that night, I don't know whether this is true, it was passed onto a channel and it's difficult to say, but someone said that when on the night that Blubbergate happened, the people at the center of it were drinking earlier at night, and it was sort of a joke. And so I kind of get the idea that Blubbergate happened. No, Blubbergate, Anna Maria is asking about Blubbergate. Blubbergate is the bogus call to Mary. That's what I'm calling it. So I hope it catches on. But I'm just saying that it seems like Blubbergate happened following kind of drinking and joking, but also within the fabric of people being tricked into saying things and people being, people thinking about arrests going on and all that kind of thing. I'm going to deal with it now in that Facebook post from Trish Nelson, what that means and where that takes us. I'm going to deal with that in a second. But I do think effectively what happened from Grandma was a spotlight was being shone onto Don, and that's totally different from a spotlight being shone by Chris McDonough or this or that channel. It's totally different. It's a spotlight shone by someone really, really close to Don, which is Grandma. The only person closer to Don than Grandma is Candace. And you can kind of expect that that's not going to happen, that Candace isn't going to, do that, shine a spotlight on Don, right? She hasn't so far. Will she in the future? We'll see. What's that about Van Gogh? Van Gogh was not the only one with a dysfunctional family. Many of us can understand too well. Van Gogh was someone who also, in a weird way, the family had to separate from Vincent van Gogh, and he felt the same thing as well. So sometimes it's good for everyone when you go your own way, and it's not always dad's fault or brother's fault or whatever. You've got to be an adult and kind of get on with your life. But what I'm trying to get at is the spotlight's being shone, and it's an uncomfortably close to home thing, even if Grandma didn't mean for it to happen that way. And so I think what that led to is Don feeling, wow, I need the spotlight, this uncomfortable glare that is shining on me, I need to shine it somewhere else. And there have been quite a few spotlights shining on Don, but didn't you get the feeling that Don wanted this glaring light shining on somebody else? Didn't you get that feeling? Timmy, do you want to? So isn't that what has been happening? Don has been trying lately to shine the spotlight onto someone else, onto Mary, onto the interview room. And, Don has kind of been discredited, or Don has been, what's the word, criticized, maligned, whatever you want to say. And so Don wants that stuff to go to somebody else. Criticizing, in the calls that we've heard, the one that Chris McDonough played where Mary spoke to Don, he maligns Jeannie to her sister. In the call where so I don't know if you get what I'm talking about. It's trying to shift the spotlight. In the call from Candace to Mary, there's something else going on there as well. It's trying to I just wonder whether that wasn't intended for Jeannie, where Jeannie would feel, oh, look what I've done, feel guilted by that. She would feel bad about that and then change her mind. And that is what brings us to this next thing from Trish, is Jeannie going to change her mind? Is Jeannie going to change her mind about pressing charges? Is Jeannie going to feel sorry for Don? Bear in mind what's been happening. There's been a lot of tears and blubbering and poor me. Well, has it worked? Bear in mind, remember who we were at the beginning of this case. We saw these people. We had certain impressions, but we sort of wanted to reserve judgment and said, we don't know what's going on here. We don't know what life's like in Tennessee. We don't know what's going on. So we're going to reserve judgment. And part of what came through in that is people feeling sorry for them, saying, you know what? And I remember someone saying, Summer may have had the perfect life. She's outdoors, she's playing outside. She may not have had resources, but she may have been a very happy child. That is like the opposite to what I think was going on, where Summer, I think, was starting, if it wasn't already happening, she was about to go down that path that Jeannie went on, right? So not a very happy story waiting for her. All I'm saying is, when you have sympathy, it can often interrupt the discernment that we need to have. You might say it's cold-hearted discernment, or you might say it is unkind or judgmental. As a Christian, how dare you judge these people? But what we're trying to do is be sensible. We're trying to use discernment and say, what does this evidence actually show us? What is the reality here? And sympathy can often interfere with that. You say, I'm not going to think about that because it's not nice, or it doesn't look good, or it's unkind. That's not a good reason to, it's good to be sympathetic, it's good to be sensitive, but you've also got to be sensible, not be ignorant. And what I think is really important to emphasize in this area is there are people who get away with you sympathizing with them. They want you to feel sorry for them so that you don't ask questions and they don't have to answer the questions. Think about Blubbergate. Think about the scenario, this serious situation that's happened. Okay, well, now I need information, and Mary's trying to get information. Who did this? What happened? What is going on? But it's just blubbering. And so you can stop trying to find out what's going on when you're just sympathizing. But that's exactly what the person wants. They want you to sympathize. They want you to not ask questions. They want the emotions to overwhelm everything so that you don't think about it. It's emotions instead of thinking. And I take the position in true crime almost of a prosecutor and a court case. You're trying to prosecute a court case using evidence, not emotions. There is an emotional aspect to it, right? There is a emotional thing that resonates, but to prosecute a case in court, you need to have a dispassionate examination of provable evidence, and it's the evidence from the one side versus the evidence from the other side, right? there are cases certainly where emotions actually overrun the outcome. The O.J. Simpson case is a great example of that, where sympathy leads to a judgment that's actually incorrect. Another example, which is quite interesting, is the Scott Peterson case, where I think it was the opposite. People, I think, had sympathy for Lacey and to some extent sympathy for Amber and anger towards Scott Peterson, but there wasn't really a lot of evidence. But based on those feelings, Scott Peterson was convicted. You could say that that is right, but actually we won court cases where people are convinced with arguments that are sensible, not emotional, not sentimental. Interestingly, the Casey Anthony case is quite an interesting case in that regard. I'm narrating an audiobook in that respect. It's kind of difficult to say which one was a factor there, sentiment or facts, or both, or were they both twisted in quite a clever way. So now I want to go on to the sympathy card, and let's just check. Bria says, love the audiobook. Thanks for that. I'm trying to narrate over time, like 3-4 chapters a day, so that when I'm away, I don't need to do it every day when I'm away. So I just want to get an idea. How many of you know about Trish Nelson's Facebook post about being with her grandparents, Don calling while she was there? So if you know about it, if you read it, I assume most of you do, put a 1. If this is news to you, put a 2. Most of you know about it. I see 1, 2, there's another 2. Okay, well, quite a few 2s coming out. Okay, so Trish is the daughter of Jeannie, and Trish has kind of been quite an activist, and she put up a Facebook post which has now been circulating. Anyway, so I'll just go through it quite quickly. I won't do it verbatim, but I'll just sort of summarize the main points. Trish put up a post saying that she was allowed to visit her grandparents not that long ago, and when she went to visit her grandparents, Don called. Now, that's quite interesting. I sort of wonder, was that fortuitous, or did Don know that she was there and actually wanted to talk to her? Because probably the person Don probably wants to talk to is Jeannie. Don probably wants to convince Jeannie to do something different, right? And so whose strings can he pull? Can he pull Trish's strings? Can he pull the grandparents' strings? Can he pull this, that, whatever? In any event, so one just wonders, did Don know that Trish was there, right? I wonder what Trish would say about that. Anyway, Trish said she could hear him talking and saying things about her and her mother and Mary. So that's quite interesting, is that I don't know whether he was on, loudspeaker or something, but so Don is talking to her grandparents and talking specifically about her, Trish, and her mother, that's Jeannie, and Mary. Those are the 3 people she's talking about. And so in a weird way, you could say Don is targeting these individuals. He's targeting Mary, which we know because that's who Candace called, Jeannie, because, well, we know what that's about, Jeannie bringing charges. Remember when Mary called Don, and that predated the call to Mary from Candace. Mary called to say, I'm just telling you that Jeannie's pressing charges, I'm just letting you know. And then Don got really upset, and then it led to this blubber fest, right? Blubbergate. So she overhears Don talking, and she asks to speak to him, right? Quite brave of Trish to I mean, how would you feel talking to Don? I think you would definitely feel a little bit of a jazzy nervousness. So anyway, Trish asked to speak to him, and bear in mind, for Trish, Donna's probably overshadowed a lot of what has gone on in her life, including her mother, right? Especially her mother. And she says here, as a quote, she said, I asked to speak to him. I'm so tired of the lies and half-truths. And she's feeling quite sorry for her grandparents, right? She's there and she feels sorry for her grandparents. And she feels that some of what he said isn't true. And but now she confronts him with it, and then he apologizes, and they, I guess, hear it, and then now that he's speaking to Trish, he asks Trish directly about her mother, Jeannie, and whether she's going to press charges. That's what Don wants to know. That's what Don is worried about right now. That is what I guess is keeping Don up, right? That's the main thing. And so Trish says she honestly felt quite upset, and she actually wanted to say certain things to him, but there was so much drama going on that she decided against that. And so when Don said, is your mother going to press charges, Jeannie said, I'm not sure. In other words, she was trying to de-escalate the situation, but also there was a feeling of sympathy for her grandparents. I don't know whether she felt sympathy for Don, but there's certainly a feeling of sympathy there. Now, I think this is a little bit different. When you're in a situation like that, when you're in the situation, and it's family members, I think it's a little bit different saying you should never feel sympathy, or you shouldn't give in to sentiment, and you should be sensible and facts only. I'm saying, as the true crime community looking into these things, you need to try and be a scout and gather information and get a sense of someone's identity and all that kind of thing. And that's got to be done diligently and with you're trying to accumulate an archive of information, of facts, right? And emotions are going to interfere with that. Someone in that situation is totally different. You can expect to be emotional in that situation. But in any event, so what happens is she says to Don, I'm not sure whether Jeannie is going to press charges. I don't know whether she has already, I don't know. But then she asked him flat out, she said, why did you guys call Mary the other night and say you were arrested? So she's now also, addressing that aspect, right? And I think this is really interesting. She asked him this question. Bear in mind, this seems to be part of Don's plan. It wasn't that Candace just called Mary. It was a scheme, right? And he said, we were trying to find out who is giving information to Chris McDonough. But who does he call? Who do they call? Mary, right? And so I think what is actually happening is they're trying to get to Jeannie, probably because Jeannie wouldn't take their call. So the next best person is Mary. And then you have the sympathy card played by Don, saying, if your mom presses charges, I'm going to go to prison, blah, 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 blah. You know, in a weird way, Jeannie's been in a prison for much of her life. Keeping the secret has been like a cage. And Jeannie's just one person. There are all these other people as well. And so she hung up. Trish hung up on Don. Remember, Don hung up on Mary in that call. Candace sort of hung up on Mary. Once she hung up, but she said, well, the police said I can't talk to you anymore, and then she cut it short, kind of thing. I do actually want to do a video comparing Candace's call, this bogus blubbergate, to Patsy Ramsey's call. Not because I think it's this huge rocket science, let's investigate this, just because I think it's quite interesting, even kind of amusing, to see how they correspond in a weird way. This excess of emotion and how it is intended to cloud you from asking questions and getting answers to your questions, right? So let's just go through this. In the aftermath to Blubbergate, which is what we're calling Candace's blubbering, Oscar-worthy, fake crying call to Mary about Don being arrested, was that supposed to? Who was going to arrest Don? The Boston Mafia, or what? Don has been trying to do some damage control. He's been trying to shine it seems like he's been trying to shine a distorting, disingenuous spotlight on other family members. You certainly got that impression when he spoke to Mary. Jeannie's Don's stepsister, and Mary's also Jeannie's sister. And there's no love lost between, the impression I get is there's no love lost between Trish, Jeannie, and Mary, and Chris McDonough in one group on the one hand, and Don on the other hand, right? Trish says she told Don she wasn't sure whether Jeannie was going to press charges. I wonder whether that's true. I mean, I can understand her being a bit reserved under those circumstances, not wanting this really dramatic call. But one wonders whether she did actually feel some sympathy for Don. Don seems to be quite good at getting you to sympathize with him. You certainly, think about the SDA Church who have been sympathizing with Don and Candace week after week after week, prayer vigil after prayer vigil after prayer vigil. I think that a lot of what is the currency with some of the folks there is sympathy. I'm soft-hearted, and this is all very sad, kind of thing. So Don was actually guilting Trish about spending 25 years to life if he got a third strike, right? I don't think it would be 25 years to life. I could be wrong. So it's he's kind of really laying it on quite thick. It's really, like quite a hectic sentence. I'm not sure if that's right. Maybe it is. I don't know. It sounds a bit excessive to me, but I wonder whether this particular call was recorded as well, given that so many of the other calls were. I also wonder, is there a change in this feeling of sympathy for Don? I do think the fact that Chris McDonough's name came up from Don and the way Candace called Mary shows to what extent plans and plots have been afoot to figure out who is pulling strings and somehow regain control of the narrative. That is what this is all about. So you take this little kind of puppeteering that's going on, just in terms of this one scenario, the scenario of Chris McDonough recording calls, what happened with Grandma, with the Facebook Messenger, it being put out on YouTube, and then you almost get the sense that Blubbergate was a response to that. Let's do the same thing, kind of thing. We can play our own game at this. And what is that? Well, isn't it plans and plots to find out who's pulling strings and try and regain control of the narrative? I want to be the puppeteer. I don't want to have my strings pulled. I want to be the puppeteer. I want to control the narrative. Through deception, it's got to be said, through deception. Obviously, what Chris McDonough has revealed, in particular about Jeannie, has put Don and possibly Candace as well on tenterhooks. So let me just say that again. What Chris McDonough has revealed about Jeannie has made Don very, very nervous. I think Candace is also very, very nervous. And I just want to emphasize again, Jeannie's been holding onto this secret for 37 years. So to then come forward, that is quite a big deal. And I guess the question they're asking is, who's been encouraging or pushing Jeannie to come forward? Let me just say that again. If Jeannie's been holding on to this secret for 37 years, then they've got to be feeling, or maybe Don is feeling, He didn't have to worry about Jeannie, but now he does. Who is encouraging Jeannie to do something that maybe she wouldn't otherwise have done? I don't know whether that thinking isn't kind of mistaken as it is, because my sense was that Jeannie came forward out of her own when Summer went missing. 5-year-old Summer went missing and something clicked with Jeannie. That was the impression I got. But I think the impression Don has, and it might be delusional, it might be wishful thinking, it might be wrong, maybe it's not, but it might be that Jeannie wouldn't just come forward. Someone is pushing her to come forward. Who? And that person, we need to ... right? I also think Don and Candace may have tried to manipulate Mary in an effort to control Jeannie. Chris McDonough called it triangulation. Triangulation comes about because of insecurity. And does Don have a reason to feel insecure given this scenario? And he's attempting to put two people against one another. Well, let me just define triangulation. Triangulation is attempting to put two people against one another by a third person, right? Isn't that what's happening here? Often in family dynamics, triangulation is often associated with one family member made a golden child. This is quite interesting. In triangulation within family dynamics, one family member is made the golden child that can do no wrong and enjoys unconditional support, while another becomes the scapegoat and can do no right. No matter what they do, they can't do anything right. In Don's conversation with Mary, this is my opinion, it sounded to me like he wanted Jeannie to be the scapegoat, right? It's Jeannie's fault. He accused her of not being innocent, but then he also seems to make himself out to be the golden child, hard as that is to believe. So in the triangulation thing, Jeannie's the scapegoat, and Don seems to be setting himself up as the golden child. I didn't do anything wrong. And then Mary is supposed to kind of, do something with the scapegoat kind of thing, to be turned against the scapegoat kind of thing. So that's my spiel. What do you guys think of that position? Gypsy, thanks a lot. I have thanked you. Let me just get back to chat here. He uses Mary in his triangulation technique. That's from Bria. Boys are usually the golden child. That's quite interesting. Summer had a will. That's also interesting. I do think where there's drug addiction, I think there's quite a lot of narcissism. I think you can almost link it to hedonism, when you have just this constant thing of, I want to feel good, I want to feel good, I want to feel good. I think hedonism and narcissism are kind of a marriage made in heaven in terms of that stuff. A narcissist needs supply, while a hedonist also needs that feel-good feeling, right? And I think there's a match between that feeling of I feel empty inside, I just want to feel nice, to that thing of I want people to say nice things about me, even though they're not, I don't know if they're true. Let's just look at some of your comments. Jeanette Maxwell, some people are either born narcissists or nurture causes it. I wonder whether narcissism isn't a symptom of a lack of self-awareness. In other words, because I just don't know if very self-aware people are very narcissistic. I think self-aware people might be worried. Well, I'm a little bit worried that I could be a bit narcissistic about this. Or am I being narcissistic? But as soon as you think that, well, then you're not. So I just wonder whether the cure to narcissism is self-awareness, but also it comes about because of a lack of self-awareness. I mean, think about someone who's entitled. if you're entitled, you're just not thinking things through. You're just thinking, I should have that. You're not, I'm driving a vehicle now where I'm sort of wondering, is it going to impact the climate? In other words, that self-awareness is interrupting that feeling of, whether you want to call it entitlement or, feeling good about a vehicle, if that makes sense. Valerie Mooney, thanks for that, says, am I wrong in thinking only the final incident occurred when he was over 18? I'm not sure. I get where you're coming from. I think you could, in a legal sense, you could say that, but I also think what happened before that would certainly be aggravating. Legally, it would be quite difficult to say. If you're aware of the Aiden Fucci case, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, that is a kid of 14 years old, I think, who's being tried as an adult. So there are some cases where, in terms of, a scenario hypothetically, where you have something going across the point of becoming what's the word? Reaching majority, you're no longer a minor. In terms of if someone was sentenced, in terms of that, it would deal with the part after that person was no longer a minor. But I do think the rest is relevant. It's certainly not my area of expertise, that particular area. But I do think you do have a point that that last period would be something that would be looked at. But then there are also the other incidents as well with other people. Sharon says, please use acronyms. Follow the money. Just looking at some of your comments here. Yavel says, I think Aiden is malingering. I don't think I think you're right about that. But it is quite interesting. He's only 14 years old. Was it 13 years old? If you compare Aiden to Burke Ramsey, Burke was, it's not much of an age difference there. Just in terms of how the law is looking at Aiden, it's just quite interesting. Claire Burrows, still don't know how they're getting away with it. I think it looks like someone's getting away with something. I don't know whether they are. If you're familiar with true crime, even with the Chris Watts case, after the first day, everyone left him. The police were in his home. The police left him, but that didn't mean that he'd gotten away with it. He may have thought he got away with it. I mean, he called his girlfriend that night, but that's part of like a ploy. You continue with your investigation. You're also trying to make sure you can prove your case. And they probably wanted to talk to Nicole Kessinger before they spoke to Chris Watts again, and that is kind of what happened. So I don't really think it's a case that they've gotten away with it or the police don't know anything. It's kind of in that legal limbo place kind of thing. Joe Terry says, I cannot wait until it all hits the fan. If you take the Laurie Vallow case and the Barry Morphew case, there may be quite a lot of waiting. The Letitia Store case as well, a lot happens and then nothing happens for quite a long time sometimes. Stephanie says, every time he opens his mouth, he's helping build the case against him. Keep talking, yeah. I do kind of wonder, we're at day 81, are we going to reach day 100? What else is going to happen? So much has happened. What else is still going to happen? The next step does seem to be, is Jeannie going to do something? Has she done something? And then what? If Jeannie has gone and pressed charges, then what? Isn't the ball now in law enforcement's court? Is that what law enforcement have been waiting for Jeannie to come forward? Is law enforcement waiting for Jeannie and someone else and someone else and someone else and someone else to come forward? Are they waiting for the full roster to come forward? Are they waiting for grandma to come forward? But I think you can kind of see that they are wanting whatever happens to stick, and so they need as much as they can get. Yeah, it is frustrating. Dodging Bullet says, whatever happened to Jose, I don't think he left the mountain. I think he did. He went to another state. In fact, I think grandma took him somewhere. Was it North Carolina or somewhere? Could grandma be working? I don't think so, based on what's just happened. Janae Ann, I think, okay. I think everyone brings a different view to the events. Everyone's got a kind of a different approach, which is sometimes useful. Aries says, I'm feeling puzzled. You just refresh this page. Let's have a look here. Kirsten says, I think I got more out of this than 5 years in therapy. Okay, that's good to hear. I must say, from my perspective, I try and, as a true crime channel, I try and bring it back to, like, whatever is happening in a particular case, I try and bring it back to make it relevant to us. And kind of how I do that is I'll refer to something that is part of the fabric of a case, and I might find how it resonates with someone I know or with myself. The idea is not to be self-indulgent. The idea is to say, can you see how this is real? Can you see how this aspect, this problem, this pernicious setup can be real beyond true crime, beyond a crime, and then that opens the door for you, kind of in a safe place, to sort of acknowledge it and to sort of live with it, or to not just acknowledge it, but to sort of let it float up, so that you can kind of sit with it. You don't need to do anything with it. You just need to feel it for a while, because it's something that you may have pushed aside, right? And so, in other words, we want to edify ourselves. It's kind of like, I don't want to be cheesy, but it's finding lights in the darkness, and the lights in the darkness that you see in terms of the insight you get into a case, you can bring into your own shadowy life where things may not have been so clear, and it just helps to clarify that. And I think when you do that, when you join hands in that way, when you connect things, you connect these fragments to yourself and your psychology and people you know, it helps us to, as a society, to know ourselves, and that to me is quite important. It's important to know these people we're talking about, but then to take that back and apply it to ourselves, and that has got some value and some meaning, I think. Bobby Cat says, I work with SA survivors. I was floored when I learned how common it is For addict parents, okay. Not uncommon at all. I'm sick over it. These victims are so broken. We need to make changes. I think if you go into that area, you've got to ask the question, why is an abductor not being identified, or why is some specific person not being identified that grandma noticed or somebody noticed? Some interloper, someone that has been visiting the family often or whatever. And it's possible that someone like that does exist, we just don't know about, but it doesn't feel that way. Someone's name hasn't been coming up over and over again. And that's why I've got a bit of a problem seeing that aspect. I get what you're saying. I tend to see it as it was happening specifically with one individual, but I'm certainly no expert. Lindsay says, love your channel. Thanks, Lindsay. Is JC here? Jean is here. That's good to see you. Very disturbing, but thanks for sharing your experience. Anna says, I'm sure not going to let my grandkids disappear without a fight. Okay. Okay, guys, not going to be here very much longer. Let's see if we can get the likes up to 1,000. Do any of you have any questions? At this point, I don't see myself doing a live tomorrow. When I do another live, I may be somewhere else. Just see, Kristen Hacker, narcissism is made. I think some of it is, I think some people are natural narcissists. But I do think narcissism can be aggravated, for example, by social media. If you're a naturally narcissistic person and someone says, yes, Facebook, spend your whole day on Facebook, it's gonna add fuel to that. That's certainly my experience of it anyway. Let's just have a look. Margie says, thank you for your excellent analysis and the way you make this case relatable. So what I can tell you guys about, like I said, I do want to do another video on kind of, probably sounds a bit inappropriate, but just kind of looking at Candace's Blubbergate compared to Patsy Ramsey's 911 call. And I just want to show you again just how the emotion in those calls prevents people from kind of thinking straight, but basically allows the caller to control the narrative by flooding it with emotion. And so that person then controls that call. That's kind of another video I want to make. I've been waiting a long time to do a video on Madeleine McCann on the last photo. In that case, I don't know if I'm going to have time to do it in the next couple of days, but I'm hoping to do that quite soon. I also want to talk about the motive in the Aiden Fucci case. At kind of first sight, it actually feels like a motiveless murder. I don't know how many of you know about it. It's not motiveless murder, but at first glance, it certainly appears that way. And of course, the trick is the motive for an adult and the motive for a child are completely different. The reasons why someone of a certain age does something and someone of a different age does something totally different. But one does wonder, what is going on with young people? What are they seeing that leads to something like that? That kind of thing makes sense to them. What if GM is mistakenly talking about the swimming hole video? K. Heflin says, I live 5 minutes from the Aiden Fucci case in Northeast Florida. I can help in any way. If I can help, let me know. So is the home where he lived like a really expensive home in an expensive area? Because that was the impression I got from the cameras inside the home. I also found that quite incredible, the camera footage from inside the home. Denise says, I lost my daughter in October 2020. Sorry to hear that. I would be on every corner, parking lot, passing out flyers. Yeah. Have you noticed how, certainly in terms of Don and Candace, Summer seems to just be that they've moved on. Kind of feels that way, doesn't it? Dodging Bullet says, good night, Nick. Thank you. Good night. Thanks a lot. Life Off Grid. It's good to hear that. Thanks a lot for that. Patience is a virtue says, we enjoy your analytical interpretations. It stimulates our minds. Thank you for that. Yeah, I know, Laurie, you're right. He did brag before that happened that he was going to become famous for doing that. And I must say, I'm not surprised at that at all, because I've studied mass shooters, and a lot of these young boys, who are struggling to get traction in terms of their social status, that's very important at that age. They somehow seem to get the idea that if they do that, they're going to instantly, magically become, someone's going to know their name. And what seems to be going on, I don't know whether it's boys only, I don't know whether girls are the same thing. You have to be popular, not even popular. Popular is the wrong word, I think. You've got to be famous. And if you're infamous, that's just as good. But the worst thing is anonymity. The worst thing is nobody knowing your name. The worst thing is being invisible. And so any way you can get people to notice you, even if it's through the worst possible thing, is worth it. The end is kind of worth the means kind of thing, whatever the means may be. And that is a horrible lesson to be learning, that we're living in a society where, a lot of people are paying attention to nonsense. And so a lot of people paying attention to nonsense doesn't mean that nonsense isn't nonsense. So I don't know, but somewhere this message is being brought across that you are nothing unless a lot of people are paying attention to you. And so, I think the problem there is, where are you getting your sense of value from? What is your value system coming from? You're not getting a sense of self-value. It's only coming from outside. What? Material possessions, likes, influence, whatever. What about, and how do you then undo that? How do you, I know what the answer is, authenticity, bring up a genuine person, treat a person genuinely, see them for who they are and acknowledge them for who they are, not for all the accoutrements around that, Thanks a lot for that, KK Heflin. I definitely do want to go into the Aiden Fucci case. Okay, I'm at about 90 minutes. I'm not really going to take it further. Let's just look at some of your comments. There was one from Laurel Weaver. She says, I believe that if Don did that, okay. Not my first rodeo too says, thank you. You move me beyond anger and heartbreak. Our granddaughters live on our ranch. Interesting to observe all the electronic messages in their lives. Horses and chores help ground them. Yeah, one of the best places to raise anyone, even if you're an adult, is nature. Nature is a great teacher. just seeing how things are connected and feeling your feet on the ground and moving through nature, I think gives one a sense of proportion and the right calm and the right sense of place and how things fit together, and just quietly appraising, how things work and so on. I've got a little garden out there, and just seeing how the plants change and how certain plants flourish and how others need help and care. It's a small little garden, but it's been so enriching seeing how life manifests in different ways, and sometimes wonderfully and easily, and other times with great difficulty, but also beautifully, when it does. Some of those who know about my garden know that we get rain spiders here, and there's another nest has appeared actually above the bird bath, and actually what happened was the nest fell into the bird bath, so I don't really know whether the baby rain spiders are going to come out. I don't really know how I feel about that, to be honest. Let's just look at that. Bob Van Lara. It's the Tristan Bailey case. Okay, thanks a lot for that. I certainly can't pay attention to every case. Like right now, I'm kind of thinking, I started the third book in the Treachery series, and I would love to finish it. That's on Casey Anthony. Also, I started a book dealing with 9/11, and I really wanted it to be out last September, and then I wanted it to be out this September, and it's just not out, it's not ready. And so there's so much that I really want to get to, but I just can't get to it all. Just can't. And I'm not going to be writing books. I'm not going to end up with 200 books that I've written. I wanted to assemble a body of work, and I've done that. I just can't cover everything. Carol Johansson says nature is our respite. Yeah, nature's a great place to recharge, to regain your perspective, to regain a sense of true rest. Have you ever noticed the sounds in nature are soothing, whereas the sounds of man, all of them, cars, the sounds of a computer, phone, chatter, they're all kind of, they're not soothing unless you're listening to ASMR. Stephanie says, thumbs up. So let's see if we can get to 1,000 thumbs up, and then I'm going to be out of here. Tigers Bounce Tompkins, she was 100% on target with the Dable and Valo cases. Also giving details on the Morphy case. I'm not quite sure what that's all about. How about a biography? You would have a lot to contribute to society. I haven't written a biography, but I have written a book that's got quite a bit of biographical stuff. It's called On Writing for Kindle, where I speak about my journey as a writer and how I started writing for Kindle. No one really cares about that book, though. All sentient beings are sacred. Life is sacred. Please do the Madeleine McCann case. I think do you mean the next video, or because I've got a lot of videos in playlists on this channel on the Madeleine McCann case. Yvette Kelly, I think, has just started watching this live. She says, Timmy looks so adorable. I love the eyebrows. So I think you're working your way through. Tracy says, I think grandma's sweating because she knows everything, and if they do have anything to do with it, she's going down with them. That's quite an interesting point. Brenda Woodruff, you're doing a good job. Thank you. Thanks, Brenda. I think Grandma's sweating. I think Don's sweating. I think Candace is also sweating. Tessie says, did little Timmy get a haircut? Yes, he did. He's going to be, I'm hoping to you guys, Timmy's very first visit to the beach. So I can't wait to see the look on his face. I wonder what you guys are going to think when you see his look on his face. Someone says, how about the Ray Rivera case? Carol Jansen said, right away I did the math and I thought there were 4 hours missing in the world's timeline. Well, there are at least 4 hours missing in the afternoon. There are also quite a few hours missing in the morning. The whole June 15th is a kind of Swiss cheese, isn't it? E. Miller says, Grandma knows all. Mediocre comedian, good to see you. One sound from humans that is so awesome, the sound of a baby laughing. The thing is, it goes from that to crying so quickly and easily. Do you have a photography book? I have a book called 8 South African Artists, I think, and I think there may be links to some of my photography in that. Yeah, quite a good point there. I was on Facebook where I had a lot of albums on there that a lot of people kind of browsed and that was all free to view. Don't think that's available anymore. I do sometimes put slideshows on Patreon just of photography. I'll probably do that later this month. Just when I travel, I'll put some pictures or photos that are artistic or moving, compelling landscapes. I'll put up on Patreon again. We had 973 likes. We're almost there. Am I a Libra? No, I'm not a Libra. Interesting question. True Crime Wifey says, Aiden Fauci trial will not be a precedent in Jackson, Florida. Okay, it's interesting. Colette Lewis, thanks Colette. Do you think the call Candace made to Mary was a ploy for Don to disappear? Well, the thought certainly occurred to me, but Don didn't disappear. I heard a rumor, I don't know whether this is true, but I heard a rumor that, see, we had 1,000. Thanks a lot for that, guys. I heard a rumor that I think Mary called for a wellness check and then Don was there. So I don't know if it's true. It's just something I heard. Does anyone know about that? Sandra says Don is home according to another creator. Okay. Sharon says, yes, Nick, it's true. So, yeah, so I don't think anyone, I think if Don was gone, everyone would know about it. I also want to just say this. At the time where there was this sort of craziness going on YouTube where all sorts of creators were saying Don has been arrested or is Don arrested or Don arrested, question mark, whatever. The media would be all over something like that if that had happened. It would be absolutely clear because that is a newsworthy event. It would be that has happened. And so you wouldn't have an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours going with the mainstream media just saying nothing about it, right? So when something like that happens, when a major thing happens and the mainstream media are silent, that should tell you everything. Not just the mainstream media, but also credible YouTube channels, credible true crime channels. They will know early on some of these things as well. Okay. E. Miller says Nick equals high IQ. I'm going to say what I've got on my Instagram profile. It's a quote from Einstein. It's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer. So I do just spend quite a lot of time thinking about stuff quite quietly and hopefully sensibly. And if you just do that, if you spend some time paying attention, you don't need to be that smart. You can figure things out. Writing a narrative, and I must say, it's so weird. Even though I've written it, even though I wrote the book Treachery, it's so weird reading through some of those chapters and looking at the level of detail there. And that came from just painfully paying attention to all of the information on the Casey Anthony case. And to, like, even though I wrote it, I found some of what is there quite astonishing, but it's not so astonishing. Anyone who pays a lot of attention day after day after day after day and puts it all together is going to come up with a compelling narrative. You know, that's how you get expertise in true crime. Just keep paying attention to a particular case. Please sort out the world's problems. Okay, well, I need to go and do that. KK Heflin says Treachery and Doubt are both excellent. Thanks for that. Doubt is on the Madeleine McCann case. Bria, are you enjoying the last bits of summer? Because the fact that it's getting warm here, I know it must be getting colder there in France. I can't really imagine going to France in winter. I just can't imagine. I think of France in a summer way. Lily Bell, I think Lily Bell, you from South Africa. Hey, are you from Durban? I'm going to travel to the coast, but I'm not going to say quite. You'll see where I'm going. I think because I think you're on Patreon, so you'll see. Just look at some of your last comments here. Casey Anthony is another case I'll always believe was premeditated. Brilliant and humble. Thanks, Susie, to anyone. Julie Johnson, Debbie Sinsel. If she's not with us anymore, then I wish someone would come forward and put her little soul to rest. Quite a good question from Jacqueline. Or Nick, do you know the district attorney for Hawkins County? No, I don't. Denise Pennington, another girl missing in Hawkins County, blue eyes, blonde, beautiful teenager. Love France in the fall. The winters are quite mild in the south of France. I just can't imagine France brown and not green. I don't know. I always see France as green and gold and sunny and warm. Yvonne Phillips, could Chris have coached Mary to make that call? I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of cooperation going on. In other words, in this camp, we're gonna, organizing and cooperating and strategizing, and in this camp that. I wouldn't be surprised. Cindy Target, thanks for that. Do you think Don used Candace to make the sisters drop the charges? It does seem that way. It does seem that the Blubbergate call was intended for charges to be dropped. It seems like the point of that call was to lead to sympathy. So in short, it does look that way, yeah. Okay, guys, my voice seems to be giving out. I've been narrating so many chapters that they schedule, so they're going to be coming out in advance. But just shows my voice can only take so much. So I think I'm going to say adieu. But thanks a lot for everyone who's made it. Thanks a lot to all my mods. Thanks to those who contributed super chats. Thanks to those who participated. Good to have everyone here. Let's just take a final question. Hilarious 2 says the golden child is weak. The scapegoat will have the opportunity to become strong. That can happen. The golden child gets such a free ride that things get too easy for them. And the other one knows that they've got to work hard to, almost that life's not fair. So they know they've got to work harder to get results, and those results are kind of real in a way. Bria, thanks a lot for that. I appreciate it. Okay, guys, thanks very much. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and enjoy your Sunday. I'll see you guys next time. Ciao.